Can I ask specifically with regards to current and serving and also, former Air Corps members, how many outstanding cases are open within the State Claims Agency regarding current or former Air Corps members?
Originally, we had 11 of those claims, and we settled one claim. And following that claim, we received 13 more. So we have 24 cases now. And
are they at various stages of process? Like when would the earliest of those 20 have been opened?
In the case we settled, for example, my recollection is that proceedings were served in 2014 and the case was settled in 2025. And the other cases are at different levels of engagement and readiness and so on.
Would there be others from that kind of 2014 era?
Yeah, I guess many of them would probably date back to that date and maybe, dates after that. In
your expertise, Mr. Breen, why would it take so long for a case to be ongoing that long?
Yeah, now, when I answer this, Deputy, I'm not being critical at all of, obviously, when I say this, but sometimes when, a plaintiff is in a very complex action like that, because you're dealing with exposure to chemicals and generally in an environment that alleges toxicity. So therefore there are complex issues of liability and causation for both sides, and very often, and if you add in discovery to that as well, you can see why you'd get delays of kind of certainly a good number of years. But in the particular case that we settled, there were periods of relative inactivity, and when I say that, I just mean legally. I'm quite sure there was a lot of work being done in the background.
But maybe it's not as simple as to say in whose court does the ball lie for those cases, but would that be with the State Claims Agency right now, or would it be with the plaintiffs, do you think?
When a plaintiff sues, really the ball lies largely with the plaintiff, but we don't rely on that, Deputy. What we try and do, wherever we can, if we acknowledge that the state is a liability, we try to make an approach ourselves and say, if both sides are ready, that can we settle this case on terms that are acceptable to both parties.
Thanks, Mr. Breen. Thanks so much.
Deputy Bennett.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to welcome everybody here today. So, just following on, I suppose, from Joe's question in there in relation to wages and staffing, it actually seems to be a fantastic place to work, that there's so many staff on such high salaries. Would I be correct in saying that the salaries that you're paid are much higher than civil servants in most other part of government?
Just wait for the microphone. I think if you're looking at the data, you would say broadly yes. The NTMA set up 35 years ago was designed to be a market-based private sector model to get people in to manage the assets and liabilities of the state. So yes, you would say that.
Yeah, and do you think that's fair?
Well, I do, because, and the reason I do, and other people set up the agency on that basis, is when you look at the scale of what's managed in the NTMA, so in terms of going to the market, funding that over 200 billion, doing it in a prudent way, managing the assets of the state, you need the talent in the room. When you're talking to asset managers, fund managers, you need to have people on both sides of the table who know what they're doing. You have people doing payments, and we failed in this one payment. You have people doing derivative transactions, need to know which side of the button to press on the FX, which currency they're trading in, all those different aspects. And I think you need to have people of the appropriate skill and experience to do those jobs. And the second thing is, to get those people, we're competing against the banks, the law firms, the engineer firms, etc. So yes, I do.
It sounds very good, a very good salary to me. But in relation to that also, there was 270 personnel within the company also received 2.5 million last year in state-related bonuses as well. So, it's all coming from government funding. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of performance-related pay, again, it's another aspect of the pay model. It's another tool. It's non-pensionable performance-related pay. It's common in the marketplace. We're probably a little different, and we publish the amounts. Generally, the average about €9,000 or €10,000 to about a third of the staff. The one thing is we tend to disperse to more staff, because all parts, the front and the middle office, are all important, rather than pay large amounts And to some people, it might appear big, as the industry does, because it might incentivise the wrong risk-taking behaviour. So we tend to try and disperse to, as I said, about between 30-40% of staff.
So I'm just interested as well then in relation to the State's Claims Agency and the duty of care to those that have been wounded by government policies such as the thalidomide sufferers, Hep C, and now the Air Corps. Is your policy in relation to, I suppose, the pay-related bonuses, would your staff get pay-related bonuses to help ensure that you fight these cases every single step of the way? You try to break down the plaintiffs and then get them to withdraw their claims. Would you feel that your staff get pay-related bonuses for doing that?
So maybe, Deputy, before I ask Ciarán to comment on the cases and the management of claims, just in terms of performance-related pay, to be very clear, performance-related pay is set on an agency-wide basis, not set for one business unit over another, and never would the approach be to pay performance-related pay for a specific item to incentivise somebody to do a particular...
What do they get the pay-related bonus for?
Pay-related bonuses depends on the performance of the individual in their overall duties, the performance of their business area in the wider NTMA.
So you're telling me that it has nothing to do with claims?
No, people in the State Claims Agency are one cohort who also...
So they're getting pay-related bonuses for ensuring claims don't go through? No?
No, not that.
No.
For the performance of their duty overall to fulfil their mandate, but not incentivised to do one specific thing over another. They must always do the job to the best of their ability.
Okay. And the State Claims Agency, I'd just like to point this one out, they failed to spot chemical exposure in the Air Corps personnel, even though they did health and safety audits from 2006 till 2026. Would I be correct in saying that? They failed to see that, and that there was no adequate PPE. Would I be correct in saying that?
Maybe I could answer that.
Yeah.
Deputy, because I'm the director of the State Claims Agency. Yes, our risk management team, which is a team of scientists and engineers and environmental and fire safety, qualified people, did carry out audits in Baldonnel in 2006 and
but
2007.
But they failed to see that staff weren't wearing PPE?
Just bear with me just for a minute, just want to explain. So the particular area that is the impugned area was called the Old Engine Repair Flight Workshop. By the time we carried out our audits in Baldonnel, that had been demolished or was disused. I think it was disused in 2006 and demolished in 2007. So it was never, in fact, inspected by our risk management people. So they couldn't have been aware of any issues with that particular workshop at the time.
So there was no certificates of compliance from 2006?
There were, we don't, maybe if I could just explain to you what we do. So our risk management is to advise and assist state authorities, and one of the things that we're most conscious about doing is to ensure that, say, somewhere like the Air Corps or the Navy or the Army, just looking at them as a group, that they have in place safety performance management. And that's what we do.
But when you investigated this, was there safety performance management in place or no?
Yes, and so when
it was in place.
When we went in 2006 and 2007, we absolutely made sure that such performance management systems were in place, and they were. And we did carry out spot audits, by the way, of various parts of Baldonnel, and very often we commented negatively on things that we found.
And did you spot at that time that there was a failure to store carcinogenic and highly corrosive chemicals on the property? Did you see that?
No, as I say to you, Deputy, that flight workshop was gone when we did it. But generally, in terms of chemical management, we have found that the Air Corps are adhering to proper practice.
Okay, and still you have how many cases? 24 cases are still?
We have, we had 11 originally, and said 13 very recently.
And then you have, I've also been told that there are 65 Air Corps personnel have died in relation to the health implications that happened there, but are them cases? Where are those cases then?
Well, we only deal with cases, Deputy, where cases are actually made to us, where we have claims in front of us, and as I say, that's confined to the 24 that we have.
Okay. I just want to return to the issue of the Air Corps. Now, can I just ask? Obviously, the first case, Mr. Breen. When was the first case lodged, taken?
I think it was back, most of the cases were probably lodged, or the earliest cases were probably lodged around 2013, 2014.
Okay. And again, just for the record, why did it take so long for, I suppose, you know, the case to be settled, I think last year, 2025?
Well, I can tell you, like, obviously it's difficult for me to talk about any individual case, Deputy, because you'll understand that we have, you know, to respect the confidentiality of any plaintiff. But I can say this to you definitely, that during that period of time, from the time that the summons was originally served, there were delays following that in terms of how the file was progressed.
Okay, files on your side, where the delays on... Yeah,
not at our end. And as I said earlier on, like, I'm not saying that in any critical way, but there were delays until we finally got to settlement.
Okay, and were there any disclosure actions taken against
we had
discovery?
Yeah, no, there was. The discovery wasn't actually in the case that settled. The discovery was in respect of the lead case, which actually wasn't the case that was first settled. And you'll probably be aware, Chair, that in that particular case, both the High Court and the Court of Appeal upheld our discovery applications to limit discovery, and the Supreme Court overturned that finally.
And you fully complied with that, I think, where you found in breach of the same Supreme Court?
What happened was, yes, there had been a breach by the Air Corps in that it hadn't made proper discovery, and they were ordered to make proper discovery, which they ultimately did.
Ultimately prolonging.
Yes, no, that did prolong
the case. Yes. So your prior statement that the delays were on the plaintiff's side.
Well, no, sorry, Deputy, I wasn't impugning the plaintiff at all. I was saying there were delays there. There were delays. And I agree with you that one of them was the breach in relation to discovery that did delay it. Okay.
And just in relation to, I suppose, Baldonnell, I think you portrayed the issue solely down to the engine room, or that's where predominantly, I suppose, the exposure, chemical exposures took place. Am I right?
That was certainly based on the claims as pleaded. The references are to the exposure over a period of time relative to that particular locus.
Okay, and you stated that the engine room, when was that demolished, you said?
I think it was 2007, Chair.
Okay, 2007. I think earlier on you said 2006.
I said no. I said I think it was disused in 2006 and ultimately demolished in 2007.
So the engine room was still in use up until September 2007?
I'm not sure. I honestly can't tell you emphatically, but certainly what I recollect was that it had been taken out of use and then was finally demolished in 2007.
Okay, I have here in front of me an image from Google Maps from 2009 that clearly shows the engine room still fully intact in 2009. That's dated May 2009. Are you correct with the information you given there, that it was demolished in that time frame?
Sorry, look, obviously I wasn't there. I don't know when it was exactly. What I was told was that it was demolished in 2007.
Okay, well, I think the evidence that I have is that it was still fully intact in 2009. So if the engine room was still in use up until September 2007, the information I have, the inspections carried out, when did inspections of the engine room commence?
We didn't ever inspect that engine room on the State Claims Agency side, precisely for the reasons that it wasn't actually in use, Chair. Okay,
and just the right-hand side of the engine room, that continued the avionic building, as it was called, When did that cease? Do we know when that ceased?
I don't know. I don't have that information.
Okay, so that ceased as a classroom in 2008, 2009, and that was used by the Air Corps College. And 14, it's been reported 14 persons, prematurely died from that building. And I think the information that I have is that whilst there's an attempt to portray it solely as an issue around the engine room, 102 people are reported to have prematurely died as a result of chemical exposure and other serious failures throughout the rest of the airbase.
I've just seen those stories in the media, Chair, but I mean, I can't, comment on that.
Okay.
I don't know any causal link between those deaths and Baldonnel as an employer.
Okay, so would you be, I suppose, I think there's serious concerns that chemical exposure was rampant throughout Baldonnel. Is that something that has been established in your view?
Certainly in relation to the work that we carried out. Now, you can imagine Baldonnel is a very big campus and it has many different parts to it. So our audits were carried out in different parts of Baldonnel, and certainly in relation to our examination, the management of chemical hazards was in accordance with, in terms of all of the safety performance management paperwork that we saw was in accordance with best standards.